Thank you for listening to the Following Films podcast. Today I'm joined by Marc Singer and Josh Rosenbaum. I had Marc on the show to discuss his latest film, Agent Recon. In the film, a covert military task force tracks a mysterious energy disturbance at a secret base in New Mexico that is suspected of experimenting on alien technology. The trio must fight through seemingly unstoppable hordes of mindless warriors to prevent humanity's demise. Then after the break, I'm joined by Josh to discuss his recent move to partner at Waypoint Entertainment. We also chat about Arizona's post-hardcore scene, his band Brian's Escape, and the glory of Nicolas Cage. Agent Recon will be on digital and on demand June 21st. Waypoint Entertainment will be releasing Cuckoo on August 2nd. You can check out Josh's band Brian's Escape on Spotify, or listen to the very end of the episode, and their song At the Behest of Pterodactyls will be closing us out today. Big thanks to our sponsor Bookments for making the show possible. If you live in Arizona and you need movies, games, music, home furnishings, or, well, books, visit your nearest Bookments. They have your cool covered. Hope you enjoy the show. Thanks. Hey Marc, how are you today?
I'm okay, Christopher. How are you?
I'm good, man. Thanks so much for taking time out of your afternoon to do this. I appreciate it.
I appreciate the invitation. Thanks.
Okay, well, first of all, I see we have something in common right away just by looking at the background. Do you play guitar?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I do. I compose, and I imagine you do too. I see an amp.
There's the guitar right over there. That's a bass amp right over here.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, there you are.
Little bit. I wouldn't go as far as to call myself a musician or really lay things down too often, but I do enjoy noodling around a little bit.
I think it's important. There's so many aspects to creativity, and I think it's a good thing for people to look in the background when they see your program, and they recognize the fact that being creative is important in whatever aspect. It's great. Yeah.
It saved my life being creative. I couldn't imagine it without it.
Yeah. There you go. Well, look, it's bought my guitar, so there you have it.
There you go. Exactly. Now I'm just at that place where it's more of a minor annoyance for my wife and children. So, but
and mine from my neighbors.
Fair enough. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what your decision-making process is when you decide to take on a role, because looking over, I've been familiar with your career my whole life. I was introduced to you as a child, and I've been following you throughout the decades now. And, I'm 47 years old, and you've changed and grown throughout those 47 years. And just I'm wondering what draws you in and what makes you choose projects.
Two things, basically. One of them is the enthusiasm I have for the general story and the kind of movie that I picture in my head that it might turn out to be. But that basically takes second place to how complex the character is and how worthy of investigation he is. How he's gonna spur me into looking deeper into myself and finding some things that resonate within me. And identify the character mutually from the page to the self. One of the things that I guess the way to explain it is that when we meet and talk as civilians, there's no necessity and probably precious little opportunity or value in exposing the inner works of our daily lives, the things that our philosophies and our psyches are working on all day long, whether we know it or not. The things that trouble us, the thing that excites us, the things that excite us, the things that animate us generally, pro and con. But when you accept a role, you have to check within yourself whether or not you have the capacity and the experiences within you, because those are the things that are required when you step in front of a camera. That's what a camera wants to see. That's the relationship we want to have with the persona that's being presented on the screen. So it's a long answer, but you look for whether or not you can fulfill the demands of the character while staying within the limits of the role as written on the page.
And is that also an idea of your own self-exploration and trying on a different persona than you normally wear and trying to find that within yourself, something you might not even think of, and it's somewhere in the sort of the dark, deep recesses of your psyche?
It is, and it's easy to say dark, deep recesses when describing a role like Colonel Green.
Yeah, obviously, that's sort of kind of what I was thinking of. So
in Agent Recon, but there are also bright corners that you and rays of sunshine that you also find within yourself that you didn't know were there. But basically, as you advance in your career, as one advances in one's career, granted that you're fortunate enough to continue to have a career, you're closing chapters and opening new chapters in life as you age and as your experience grows. And so that's kind of the process. That's part of the process too. So the things that you, because it's a public airing, the things that you're doing, the re-identification that you're making is not only from within yourself, but it is also as a communication to the audience and to people who've seen your work in the past. This is where my life is going. This is where these are the things that I'm beginning that I've accumulated over the years.
Well, I love that you mentioned the sunshine in this darkness, because the Colonel happens to be, to me, almost the comedic relief at times in this piece. It's not a winking at the camera thing where he knows that he's being funny. It's not intentional, but there's a way that you play this character that even just a reaction at times where it's just a grunt and a look, and it's something that I found laugh out loud hilarious. I think you're doing something really fun. I feel like there's an infectious joy in this character to me.
Well, I think there is in almost every genre of performing. There has to be a healthy sense of irony, and whether the character is aware of it or not, I think irony is what makes entertainment amusing and keeps the engagement of the audience with the deeper meanings of the story entertaining in that way. That the irony of how things are unfolding puts the audience in the position of the gods. You know.
Yeah, it's the sort of the observer, the omniscient observer, watching all the proceedings, and we get to just look in and laugh at it. And I think that's
right. Because what's serious to us is laughable to the gods.
I hope so.
May not be fair, but it's a pretty good analogy.
Well, yeah. It's one of those things that I think that comes with age also, that it's like every time I cross a new decade of my life, I can look back at the prior and think of what were the things that I was most concerned with at the beginning of my 20s, at the beginning of my 30s, at the beginning of my 40s, and what am I concerned with now? And as I inch along through this, I find myself just more concerned with the fact that, well, eventually I'm going to die. This is all falling apart. And so all these little things that you get wrapped up in, they're pretty meaningless, really, at the end of the day.
You can look back. I think acting, because it is so public and because it's such a self-investigative process, too. You look back at those chapters in your past, and sometimes you look back and think, was I ever that person? And remember how that person thought and what the limits of that person's understanding was. And you see it now from a different aspect. And I think it carries with it a certain responsibility to inform those who are younger and moving along the path that age has brought us along simply by longevity, to say, pay attention as you go along, and be easy with yourself, but at the same time be demanding. And I think that's a sort of a good balance to maintain. But that's what age does to you. I think you're right on that.
Well, it's that idea. I love that you have to hold yourself to a high standard, but not beat yourself up. Self-flagellation, that's not really going to help you out in the end. It's just,
Well, a wonderful actor named Ed Asner said, everybody stumbles, and there's going to be a stumble or two, or maybe a dozen along the way, but you have to reevaluate what caused the stumble and readjust. I think that's one of the things when you said, "What is it in a script that attracts me or attracts actors?" In Agent Recon, it's obvious that the character that I played, Colonel Green, has stumbled along
yeah,
the way, and that the younger person that he's concerned about, his own daughter, who's chosen a similar career path in the military, that she is on the verge of making a big stumble, and has in fact placed herself in mortal danger, and that is what animates the story, and that centrality of the heart, I think, is an important part of why Agent Agent Recon attracted me, but it also is hopefully the value that the audience takes from it.
oh, absolutely. And I think you could find three different audience members and find three different reactions. They could watch three completely different films with this, and it's something you wouldn't expect in a movie like this. It's obviously has social relevance with dealing with AI and these kinds of things. Right now, you have the family story that we're talking about, and also at the end of the day, if you're just looking for a fun action film, you have that also. And
Yeah.
so, in somebody that wants something a little bit more nuanced in their action films, that this isn't something that I think is the most high-minded piece in the world, but it's something that was taken seriously when it was made, and it's still fun. But you can tell the people who made it, their hearts were in it. It doesn't feel cynical in that way.
It the unknown factor is the resonance of every word you speak, because that's why three people might take away from it three different responses. And I don't mean to be too pretentious or high-minded about it, but that's one of the things that makes Shakespeare the perfect exemplar of how dramas and comedies and histories should be composed and related, because every word in Shakespeare carries a resonance, and the reason it carries a resonance is because it can be interpreted three different ways, or five, or seven, or whatever.
Well, there's something about challenging language that allows the reader or the viewer, even the listener, if you're talking about music, challenging art forces the audience to project themselves into it to some degree, where you have to interpret and you have to take the idea. It's not just being handed to you. And when you're listening to Shakespeare, it's in a language that we don't speak anymore. It's all our words, but it's constructed in a way that makes you actually sit down and think and live in these words and think of, okay, at the time, what were they meaning? You're doing this constant translation through it. And at the end, when you see Shakespeare performed live, for me personally, the words almost disappear and I'm watching performance. I'm getting the story. I'm getting the meaning through the performance, not through the words as much.
I think the best of performances in Shakespeare, and this is a controversial kind of statement to make, but it has to be. You have to sit with it for a while and consider it in its purest form, not in its own, not in a subconsciously biased way. Is the idea that characters are stereotypes, and
Hmm.
if they weren't stereotypes, we couldn't relate to them. And when we find that we can't relate to them, it's because their stereotype is not being adequately and subtly and complexly enough explored by the performers.
Well, I could not agree more. The stereotype, the archetype, it's the thing, and it's what you do within that framework that really matters. What's the deviation? That's where the real heart is. It's okay, we get the idea. The backstory or all these, a lot of the heavy lifting is done by just inserting this archetype in there. Now, what are you going to do with that? And I think that's the real meat of storytelling is to me.
It means it sort of points to the idea that there's nothing new under the sun, but there is,
Chaucer.
but there is at the same time an infinite variety
Yeah.
of how it's experienced.
It's that thing that you go along with that is completely unique and specific as all of our experiences are.
Yeah.
are absolutely relatable. And I think when you tell stories that are so specific and so true to one individual's experience,
Right.
they expand beyond that and they become something that everybody understands because they understand the emotional honesty, if not the experience of the machinations of the plot, if that makes sense.
It certainly is. It makes a great deal of sense. It is the goal of every. I'm going to limit it right now because we're talking about Agent Recon. We're talking
Yeah.
about film, so I'm going to talk about the film medium. But it is the intended goal of every actor who ever steps in front of the camera, because it is the nuances that the actor is able to glean and present that represents the role, represents, in fact, the actor's life experience. And so it's a very daring undertaking and very demanding one.
It's a incredibly vulnerable work. The way that you guys leave yourself exposed emotionally, I I don't know that it's for everyone to do that. It's that whole thing that, you know, the body, the mind doesn't know the difference when you go through that emotionally and put yourself in that headspace, that there is a weight to these experiences. And I'm thankful that you've been able to do this for this long, because I've loved watching your work over the last, 4 decades, and I hope that we got 4 more to come, man. I want to see more, and I'm still a fan. Have been since I was a kid, and love watching your stuff, man.
Well, I appreciate it, and I tell you, the more and the longer I'm involved in it, and the more deeply I'm involved in it, the more I'm appreciative of my fellow actors and directors and writers and performers, all of them. Well, Derek,
Yeah.
our director. He's the writer, director, producer, and leading man in the show, and carried all that off just with the greatest of ease. Everybody was happy. We all were our most creative because we were all supportive of one another, because that comes from the top. And the same with Chuck Norris. When he came on the set, he was as enthusiastic about being in front of the camera again, and as welcoming and as unpretentious as a person could be. And he was, I have to say, he was the epitome of the joy of the work, and the development of a soul. And so it was a pleasure to work with both of them, I have to tell you.
Well, I think the one best piece of advice I've gotten in the 10 years that I've been doing this now was life is too short to work with assholes. So
Well put. I don't think Shakespeare could have done it better.
it would have been a much nicer sentiment. He would have put it together, but I think the sentiment has always been true, I'm sure.
Right. I think you're right. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for taking the time today to do this. I really appreciate it. It was a pleasure to meet you, man.
I appreciate the invitation, and likewise, right back at you. It's been a great discussion. I felt that we were in discussion, not an interview, and that was a real treat. Thanks very much.
Oh no, I mean, it was one of those things. You have the 15, 20 questions off to the side. I see the guitar. It's like, well, I'm just throwing all that out. I just want to hang out with this guy for 20 minutes. So I appreciate you indulging me in that.
Right back at you.
All right. Thanks, man. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye. Today's episode of the Following Films podcast is brought to you by Bookman's. Are your shelves groaning under the weight of unread novels and forgotten movies? Does your attic hold a secret collection of vinyl waiting to be rediscovered? At Bookman's Entertainment Exchange, Arizona's favorite haven for pre-loved treasures, they turn your clutter into cash or store credit. But Bookman's is far more than a used bookstore. Bookman's is a cinematic journey. You can relive your favorite films or discover hidden cinematic gems. They have an extensive DVD and Blu-ray collection that offers something for every movie buff, from cult classics to box office hits. Bookman's is a symphony of sound. Dust off your headphones and get lost in the world of music. They offer a vast selection of CD and vinyl records, encompassing everything from classic rock to contemporary pop and everything in between. Bookman's is a gamer's paradise. You can level up your gaming experience with their diverse collection of used video games. From retro consoles to the latest releases, you'll find everything you need to conquer virtual worlds at fantastic pre-owned prices. Bookman's is the home for the curious. If you're looking for that unique piece to add a touch of personality to your space, explore their curated selection of home goods, including vintage finds, decorative items, and even musical instruments. Bookman's is also goes without saying, a universe of books. From timeless classics to the latest bestsellers, their meticulously curated selection caters to every genre and interest. Whether you're a sci-fi fanatic or a history buff, they have the perfect book to ignite your imagination. Don't let your pre-loved items gather dust. Bookman's offers a hassle-free way to give them a second life. Just go ahead and bring in your used books, movies, music, video games, and even some home goods, and their friendly staff will assess their value. You can choose to receive cash on the spot or store credit to explore their incredible selection. And when you choose Bookman's, you'll know that you're supporting local. They're a proudly locally owned, operated business supporting the Arizona community. They have an unbeatable selection with a vast array of used media, and you'll always find something new and exciting to discover. And it's eco-friendly. By shopping pre-loved, you're giving items a second life and reducing your environmental footprint. And it's always a great value, because Bookman's offers competitive prices that ensure you get the best deal on your favorite books, movies, and music. Make sure you visit Bookman's today if you're ready to embark on a journey of discovery. Head to your local Bookman's Entertainment Exchange, browse their shelves, unearth a hidden gem, and turn your unused items into cash or store credit. And remember, Bookman's has your cool covered. I hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Thanks.
Hey, Christopher.
Hey, Josh, how are you?
Good, man. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I appreciate it.
I'm very excited. Is that like an orange colored Fender amp, or is that an orange tube amp behind you?
That is an orange tube amp behind me. Yes.
Like the brand orange, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I was in a hardcore screamo band for. Oh, I got to turn on my. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good.
I don't know. I was in a. Now it doesn't look like it, but I was in a hardcore screamo band for like 15 years, and actually, by coincidence, we just we got all of our old music remastered and just put it back onto Spotify. So the band's making a big comeback. We're in the Phoenix hardcore scene.
Well, I live in Tucson, just north of Tucson.
Oh, no
actually.
way.
So yeah. So
wait, are you still in Tucson?
I'm sorry?
Are you still in Tucson right now?
Yeah. Well, I'm
Okay.
in Marana, but I mean, close enough. It's just north of Tucson. Yes.
One of our biggest influences was from Tucson, the Bled.
Of course. Yeah. Great guys. Really nice guys. Really cool.
So we were, they were a couple years older than us, but that was like, the scene equivalent in Phoenix, like that's what we were playing in. Our breakdowns were not as cool as theirs, but they still set the.
Was that like, I'm trying to think, was Job for a Cowboy? Was that one of the Phoenix hardcore bands?
That was there. We are not that heavy.
Okay.
Cowboy, man, that's still our high school joke of like, they just released an album. I don't want to disparage anyone, but it's not good. It's not the same. Like, they need to go back to their old jobs. I think one of them's like a doctor now. Like, go back. Like, it's not the same. It's not the same pig squeals. It's
hard to keep that up in your 40s and 50s. It's not the same. So I get that.
The big bands in our scene were like, and these were the bands that were a little bit older than us. Scary Kids, Scaring Kids, and Gorilla Estates, and then our contemporaries were more like The Word Alive. Okay. But that was probably maybe after you were in the
little bit. I mean, yeah, I'm 47, so I was a little bit aged out at that point, probably. So,
were you in a band?
Not well. Okay, so I play. I've played since I was in high school. I've always surrounded myself with people that are far more talented than me. So I was never good enough to play with my friends, really. So it would have just been, not good.
Well, if you remember, like, if you're growing up in Phoenix, you have like two options. You're either playing like really hardcore music or like light indie rock, and there's like no in between. We would try to either, like, we had some songs that were like not pure heavy screaming, and like the crowd would be like, play more breakdowns, or like the flip side, we'd play with like a younger, like a light rock show, and like we would just scare everyone. And anyways, that's why I had to leave music and go into film. The hardcore band is so shocking. You didn't pay the bills. I don't understand. I don't get it.
Well, you gave up music and went into film, the far more stable career pursuit.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I chose really stable I don't even know things.
So how did that happen? How did you go from screamo band to film producer?
A good question. I mean, I had always been equally into film,
Yeah,
television, and music,
same here.
and so I actually when I went to USC, I was doing music industry and just business because I was like, why not? And with the great idea that I'm going to get my hardcore, I'm going to learn the insight in the music industry, find out how to make my hardcore band famous. Shockingly, that didn't work. But I also took some film classes at USC, and my like inspirations aren't that original. Like I was, watching Star Wars special features. Like I probably watched the special features disc on DVD more times than the actual films. Like
Yeah.
I was just like fascinated with the filmmaking process, like making stop animation videos with my parents' camcorder until they would break. And just making videos, I guess we should say, like with my friends. But when I graduated from USC, I knew I wanted to do something in entertainment. I actually thought I wanted to do music, and so I applied for the what has been my last semester of USC at an internship at WME, William Morris, trying to get into their music program. And they're like, we don't have any room there, but we do have room in our on the film side. And I was like, sweet. That sounds great too. And then a course of events like made me also realize that I should keep my music as a hobby, because I think when music is like a little personal, like I have trouble seeing the benefit of other music styles that I'm not personally into. And with film, I can have a more holistic, be like, okay, I see why this is not for me, but I know why other people like it. And anyways, I got very lucky when I was at WME. I interned there, and then I worked there when I graduated, and I ended up working in a department that was called WME Global, and it was kind of this small division led by Graham Taylor, who it then spun off to Endeavor Content and then became Fifth Season, which is owned by CJ Entertainment. But it was basically like this small group of agents who were kind of acting like producers, and they would raise money for independent films, working with all the departments in WME to like help get actors attached, help get directors attached, and then raise the money for those films. And then when the films were finished, they would go sell the rights to those films to studios at film festivals like Sundance and Cannes and Toronto. And I was joining this industry in this department in 2012, which was like at the height of like the spirits were let loose. I was like, wow, independent film is like very profitable and very easy.
This is going to go on forever.
Yeah, make a movie. It was like the 1990s, and everyone had NSYNC, so it was just like this very like lively moment. And one of the financiers that this division represented was Ken Kao, who I work with now. And I kind of realized I was definitely drinking the agency Kool-Aid. I'd worked there for 3.5 years, but I realized I am not a good snake oil salesman. And so if I didn't fully love the project, like it was really hard for me. And like, look, you're servicing a lot of clients within the agency, and like there are projects that should not be made, that will not get made,
Sure.
And Ken, was kind of just working alone. He had financed and produced two Terrence Malick films and this Oren Moverman film called Rampart. And he was just like the coolest guy. And he had just optioned 6 of my favorite scripts that I'd read that year. And he asked me if I knew anyone that wanted to come help him build out the business. And I was like, me. And then it was, honestly, this awesome trial by fire moment of what we shot, I don't know, 6 films within like 2 years. And I almost forgot how to be creative for a moment of it. And it was just like this great moment too, where like I also wasn't afraid. I feel like there's a lot of fear to ask questions in this industry, and I was just kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Like, what does being a producer really even mean? So I was just always asking questions with, from Ken and our producing partners. And I very quickly realized that a lot of people have no idea what they're doing, and it's just problem solving.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay. So, and it was just, working with Ken at Waypoint was just like this incredible. I was very, very fortunate to meet Ken and work with him, because it's just like a very special little sanctuary that Ken's built for filmmakers. And we're kind of a Swiss Army knife that gets to do everything. Anyways, that was a long ramble.
No, that's actually really good, because the one thing that stands out with Waypoint is it's almost like a record label where it's a little bit all over the map. They do things but they're consistently good. It's not like a singular thing that they do. This isn't this isn't Fat Records, but they do a thing that is, they do these indie films. They just support unique voices. And if you look at something like Hostels and compare that to mid-90s, those films could not be more different from one another, but there is something that is a individual voice that's being represented in both those films.
That is the best way to put it. The only constant thread when people are always like, what are you looking for? And it's like, honestly, we're so filmmaker driven. It's like the singular voices that get us the most excited. It could be any genre. And the budgets of our films have gone from 5 to, now we're doing Project Hail Mary. Like that's going to be very, very, very expensive, So we're all across the board on what it is. And it really is just like, how are we helping bring new voices, new stories to, and ideally, like everything that we're about is trying to have been exceptions, but like we want to be making theatrical films. And especially, we're really trying to be a part of, how can we start making films sustainably in this, like, look, the studio system, frankly, is breaking.
Yes.
No films are recouping. They're being made for too much at the studio level, and no one is seeing money on the back end of the projects, because everyone's trying to get their fees up front, and just into the studio, so the independent ecosystem, it's been so hard lately to get projects greenlit. And so that's what really inspired our slate deal with Neon that we recently just did. Because, for it came out of, frankly, some selfishness, because it was like, I don't know how I'm going to get these films made. No one's buying at the studios anymore, at the finished film product, compared to when I was, joining this industry in 2012. Things have changed. And so, it was like looking around is like, okay, who's a partner who we can really be a strategic ally, obviously from the projects we're bringing in as producers, but how can we become a place in the marketplace where we are greenlighting the most difficult to kind of greenlight projects in the independent film space and this major studio space, $10 to $25 million films that have a real theatrical viability. Because especially box office has rebounded from COVID and from these strikes. So people want to go see these original films.
Yeah.
And so we can be that place. And like, there's a couple other things like with Neon, we're trying to put in the works, nothing I can say now, but like really my like whole goal over the next couple of years is to prove that net profits can be real again. That can be my soapbox slogan, because if we don't do that, like we're just going to keep going down this path of like destruction, and really, really this industry is just going to get so small. But I think like younger audiences are going to theaters for the right films. And to bring it back to music, 'cause I'm forgetting the name of the punk rocker. It's been all over like social media lately, but he's talking about, it's like, I think he did this interview probably like 15 years ago, but it's been going around, and he's like talking about how like we as like movie consumers are like just consumers of art. We like to think we know what we want. And lately, like the studios now are so into data metrics that before they greenlight something, they're like, people, do you want this? Do you want that? And they get answers. But what this guy is saying is like, people don't know what they want. No one was asking for Jimi Hendrix. They got it and they liked it. And then, it's like, I guess like the only industry that's like really just shoving things down our throats and we enjoy it, I guess, is the fashion industry. They're not asking what do people want. And I think in the film space, it's like, I guess if you asked around, we wanted another Garfield. I don't know, but like, I know when I want to go to the theaters, like I want to be surprised and blown away by visionary storytelling. And it doesn't matter what size the budget is. Like it
No.
just like feel original. Is the marketing campaign gonna hook me in? And I think there's been a lack of boldness, and I certainly don't want to be an ageist, but you like look around at who's running the studios, and it's the same people who were running them when they were 30 years old.
Right.
And so I just think that like lack of boldness is also like, look, there are so many reasons why the box office is not the same and never will be the same again, but it's certainly not helping. So,
Well, there's stuff that's doing really well right now. You talk about Neon and look at something like Immaculate. And
yeah,
there's two nun movies that came out like right next to each other. There was one that was a prequel that nobody was asking for, that was actually very well made. It was
yeah,
critically really well received. The First Omen is actually a really strong movie,
yeah,
but nobody went out to see it. It was supposed to go directly to Hulu. It kind of disappeared in the box office. It was a little bit of a disappointment. But then Immaculate did incredibly well because it had a responsible budget, it had a hook on it, and had a ballsy ending that I don't think a major studio would have let happen. And so I think that if you have seen it, I don't want to give that away, but that is something that it speaks to all those things you're talking about and just really encapsulates the idea of taking a young movie star that people maybe haven't completely, she's the real deal now. I mean, she can clearly open a movie at this point, but it's maybe was a little bit questionable at the beginning of this year, but now it's just undeniable. And yeah, or even in a violent nature. You can go make a slasher film for $100,000, have no talking in it, but you just put enough of an original spin on it and do something that is really not that far out. But you say, what if a slasher movie was made by Gus Van Sant when he was in his, in his Jerry phase, at that point. And it's just, that's enough that gets people to go, okay. And then $2 million when you have $100,000 investment, it's pretty damn good.
it's not bad. I mean, I'm hoping maybe you agree. Like, I just feel like we're hopefully seeing like the next phase of like independent horror coming to fruition, which, I feel like, I mean, this is embarrassing to say, I didn't really get into horror until films like The Witch and It Follows. And that really
happened for a lot of people though, because it was put on the other, people almost needed they called it elevated at that point because it's like it was a dirty word that people were scared of admitting that they liked it. So
and it opened Pandora's box of like such awesome films and frankly nightmares. But and now I'm so in, and I think like our conversations when we brought Cuckoo to Neon, who was just the best partner ever. Like that's when I started drinking the Neon Kool-Aid. We were just producing this film Cuckoo, and Neon fully financed the film, and it was like it's not a typical horror film. It's a genre mashing, like analog. I don't want to say masterpiece for my own movie, but like this filmmaker is like the real deal. Tillman Singer, he is an auteur. I don't know if you saw his film Lose, which is just this wacko 16 millimeter.
Yes. Yeah.
Fever dream. And like Cuckoo, we shot on 35, but it is like a narrative film. And, but I think like,
Lose, that's the, Lose. I mean, you could say it as a narrative. That's more something you're projecting into it.
And when I first saw that movie on, I was like, oh man, this is going to be like, I was going to meet Tillman. I was like, oh, he's going to just be like a Berlin, like mole rat, rude auteur. Like this meeting's not going to go well. Turns out I could not have been more wrong. He's like the nicest, friendliest, funniest man I've ever met. And like, then he shared this Cuckoo script with me. And have you got to see it yet?
No, and I desperately want to see this movie. I'm so excited to check it out.
It defies all genre. It certainly has a genre backbone, but like it's funny from like minute one, which it was funny. When we premiered it in Berlin, they didn't see it. It's so funny, but then we brought it to, they liked it, but like at South by, like everyone is dying of laughter the whole movie, which is like, it just has this perfect fun balance. It's not campy, but it's like, it's just it's more of like if you made The Shining into a dark comedy, like that's a bold statement I just made. So I don't know. This is live. I'm making this up as I go, but it's very special. And I just, when we aligned with Neon to go make it, Tom over there, they were, like, we're not concerned with where horror is now. We're interested in where horror is going to be in a couple years.
Sure.
So I think, we're also, Waypoint is behind, as part of the Slate deal, we're helping support the Long Legs campaign. And like that
Damn.
movie have you seen that yet?
No, again, it's like those are two of the most highly anticipated films for me this year. I'm really, really excited to see both those. So
I cannot wait. Like, I have not been so scared in a long time. I went to go see it at like 10 a.m. with my team, and to decide if we were gonna like have it be a part of the slate kind of unofficially. And like, I forgot what it's like to be in a theater, like a giant theater with only a couple people in like the morning. And after like the first couple of minutes, we all like looked at each other like, oh my fucking God, what are we doing here? This is too scary. Like, I don't know if we should stay. It's so fun.
It's probably my favorite time of day to see a horror film is during mid-morning. And when you walk out of the theater, you feel like you've done something dirty and wrong because people are just going about the middle of their day and you've just witnessed something horrifying. And it's just such a great feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like super excited about, because I feel like release dates increasingly don't mean anything anymore.
No.
Like, so I'm kind of excited of this like kind of A24 neon summer of horror. We got like Maxine, the end of the trilogy, then we get Long Legs, and then we have Cuckoo, which is definitely the most weird of all of them. But I'm hoping like people get like worked up into wanting to go see something different. And like, I hope that I was just talking to someone about this, like the movies that are working are movies for younger audiences from their teens to like, I don't know, 30. Like, these movies are date movies. This is why you go to the theaters. Horror films are always working. And I just think like a lot of people are forgetting that. Anyways, that's another soapbox, but
no, we'll look at something like Skinamarink. Is there that's not something that was made by or for somebody that was used to the traditional conventions. That's somebody that was used to analog horror, people there's a whole generation of kids that grew up watching horror on YouTube in these little 3-minute bits, and they were trained for this type of a film. And so they have the patience, despite being told that they have the, shortest attention span of any generation. They literally watched a movie where nothing happens until the very end of the film. They were able to sit there for 90 minutes and told all their friends to go as well. So, and it's something that I think a lot of older people found incredibly frustrating, but my 13-year-old loved it.
Yeah, go make a movie that kids want to go see. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Younger cast who they know are like, they have a different set of celebrities that they care about. Yep. Like, it's unfortunate for us that like, in a lot of ways. And I think that's, a lot of the independent and major studio financing is kind of like based on casting, really famous people, which happens to be a list of famous white dudes from the 90s, frankly. And that's actually what brought us to wanting to partner with Neon the most, is because they're way more willing than anyone to domestically take a risk. Because like people that we find exciting and have traction here in the United States, no one in the rest of the world really knows who they are. So there's like less reliance on the way we've constructed our slate deal on it being about like really famous international value people. Cause like, I don't know how much like you or your listeners have to like know about it, but like the international sales process sucks. It's like, and it's not working really at all for anything bold right now. Our next project we're working on is with the Charlie Kaufman that he wrote and he's going to direct. And it's just like, for a Charlie Kaufman film, like we're going to get it made, but it's like when we're looking at like setting it up in a certain way with like international value, like everyone's like, all the buyers are like, oh, I don't know if that's going to be something. And it's like, unless you cast someone like at this value and like, like, all right, we're not going to set it up that way. But it's like the only thing that the internationals buyers are buying is like action films with, Jason Statham. That's what they want. They want Gerard Butler and Jason Statham, and that's it.
That's so. I mean, I guess I know action is always translated really well. But it's it is depressing, but it is one of those things where it's very bizarre that you would have, that certain territories overseas that because you're selling essentially I assume when you're producing something, are you talking about selling the rights to it for overseas distribution?
Depends how you're setting it up. I mean, look, okay. For Waypoint, like we have so many, we have I don't know 10 projects in development with Ryan Gosling. We've had a producing relationship with him. Yeah. Most of those are going to be bidding war situations across studios and streamers. There is almost like the Waypoint projects without Ryan also kind of run the gambit of like who they're for. I think that like my passion lately is focusing on these like $8 to $30 million films, frankly, because I think those are the most interesting films. Yep. And it's the space right now that I'm hoping is the way to make interesting content. And these can be made with movie stars if you get them to buy it. Like my goal right now is to basically work with some filmmakers and high level actors to show like from $5 million type films and all the way up to $25 million films that bet on yourself, bet on this film working, and we can all reap the rewards. And then I want to be able to like print out my financial statements and post them onto the internet and just be like, look what happens when you do it this way, because I think there's also a big difference in what, the marketing campaigns are looking like right now. And like AI is already everywhere. And it's in marketing for films, it seems like everyone's just ignoring the targeted advertising we can have. Like the marketing spend from a major studio buying expensive TV ads, billboards, newspaper.
And you're going after people that are never going to see your fucking movie. You're targeting the wrong people. If you have a certain genre film and you're going after the NBA finals, they're not going to see that movie.
They're not going to see it. Yeah. Yeah. Like put your basketball faith-based movie. That's when you should do that advertisement. Okay.
Sure. It makes sense.
Air Bud 5, you should do that. Or they're probably past Air Bud 5. That's what
weirdly enough, I think that thing like got up to 12 or something insane like that.
He played a lot of sports.
He did. It was a crossover.
We should always see what rights are available. I think it's right for an Air Bud company. He never did a horror film though, so we could do like
did not. just wait for it to go public domain. Just jump on it with that cynicism.
Would it be like Bad Boy or Bad Bud? I don't know. Sorry. All right.
No, that's good, man. That's good.
But anyways, yeah. So I like, the marketing spend of a company like a mini major that's not tied to relationships with a, major studio. I just feel like they can be a little bit more flexible and nimble. And I think that the major studios are catching on, but it just seems to be at a slower pace. Like you don't need to spend as much money to target the correct audience as you do anymore. And look, the distribution companies, like it's the open dirty secret of Hollywood is like the studio accounting. It's like meant to be super complicated. It's like, we've been on the receiving end of it on over 15 films, and we've seen some wonky things. And it's why like everyone audits all the time because no one believed it. But most of the time it's like they didn't do anything wrong. They robbed you in the contract that you signed because it's really confusing. So I just like, they get to charge money. They could charge interest on the marketing spend. Like that's a great way for them to make money. So I was like, why not just, spend a lot of marketing dollars? And you do need to spend to hit big box office numbers, no question. But I just think that there's a smarter way that's going to be working more and more. Like I just look at like what Neon has been able to do on the Long Legs campaign. Like,
and people are excited when I go to the theater. People are super excited. You hear like people because I've seen it 3 times now in the last 2 months playing, and people are like, oh no, this one. You can hear people pointing like that have already seen the trailer. People are excited for it. And I haven't seen it on TV yet, I haven't seen
No.
that blasted out anywhere like that. So yeah,
Like the online communities, like it was like organically, you know, because they dropped some really early like small videos,
yeah,
and I was talking to the Neon head of marketing. He's like those are just kind of like placed on the internet. They're not spending money to like advertise them yet at that point. And one of them went so viral that it gets like on YouTube, they can get kicked up into the algorithm
yep.
basically. And then it just goes into trending, and then it just skyrockets in views. And so they were just able to do, because it's just like such a different trailer. It's like not giving away the entire plot. It's mysterious. It's
It's the
exciting. It's
mood.
not,
It gives the
yeah.
feeling. That's it.
And what I'm most excited about is like they haven't even been marketing it off of Nicolas Cage, which I think is important because it's like Nicolas Cage films that they run the gambit now. Like, they could be anything, and like he's absolutely terrifying in it, but they're not making it a Nick Cage film. It's like this is a new modern horror classic from Miles Perkins, and like you need to see it to believe it, kind of thing. Which I
Well,
think is
the way they put Nick Cage's name in the trailer, it's almost like a mic drop. So you were already sold at this point. Oh yeah, and by the way, Nick Cage is in it too. There
like
you
he's
go.
long legs,
Yeah, you were already there and on board. I mean, it's just it. I don't know, anybody that has Pig and Mandy still up his sleeve. I'm on board. I'll see anything that guy does at this point. So
right. Well, I'm curious, like, what do you feel is like, how are you hoping that kind of the film content that's going to be generated, like what are you hoping that like the major studios and the indies start gravitating towards? Like, do you have any, like, from your perspective and who you've been talking to? I'm very curious what you're thinking.
well, I think you kind of nailed it in something you said earlier, where we don't know what we want. Algorithms don't know what we want. My favorite albums, my favorite films oftentimes are things that I don't necessarily fully appreciate the first time around. I need to rewatch or re-listen or be kind of exposed and sit in them for a little while. And then they just start to creep into your subconscious and they become one of your all times. And so I don't want to have a list of check boxes and say, these are the things I need. I want people who have something original, unique to say, or at least a unique spin on something, to be given the freedom to tell the story in the way they want to tell it. Because at the very least, that's something I can hang my hat on. And I think it's the festival goers attitude, where it's like, you're served really solid average vanilla ice cream for 6 months straight. And then somebody just happens to put one sprinkle on top of it and you go, oh, no, that's good. And that's all it takes, is that little twist, that little thing. And like a movie like Tarot, not for me, but it's something that from a business standpoint, I really love what they did, because they went for a straight digital campaign on that thing. And I think it ended up making over $40 million. And it was, I think high teens was the budget on it. And so digital campaign, I don't know what the numbers on it, they're not there, but it's not going to be a typical studio spend where it's, 20 to $30 million to get that thing out there. You're talking a couple million probably. And if they went to where their audience was, they went to TikTok, they went to Instagram, they, did those kinds of things, and find the people where they are already and find those voices, but that I also, you touched on Terrence Malick before, the fact that in the last, 15, 20 years, he started doing these smaller independent things, but he was able to do whatever the hell he wanted and made some of his most interesting work of his career, to me. And so I would much rather see people doing smaller things instead of having the system be you graduate from your unique voice to the MCU. I'm glad that part of the system is kind of starting to fall apart a little bit, but I think that there is it's underserved markets. There's, plenty of adults out there that want to go see films. There's plenty of kids that still want to go. There's minorities that want to go to, there's women that want to go. There's all these different people that are just not being served. We've made too many 4-quadrant films, and we just need to make something for 1 quadrant, I think.
Yeah. I'm also really curious about what's going to happen to, on the theatrical exposition side of these theaters. And now there's so many ways for people to find out about films. Like, I was still lucky or unlucky enough that like I had to be told by the Blockbuster employee in Phoenix, like what movies to start watching. Like
Yeah,
Old Boy was like probably like the first like international film I was like, what is this? Like, and and
sure.
then that was kind of like, so there's just so many ways to find out about these films now, and especially find out about, but I just remember growing up in Phoenix, which is like the fifth largest metropolis. There was
Yep.
one theater. There was one theater that had indie films. Like I remember Black Swan, which is a huge film, frankly, was playing only at the Camel View.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I there's less indie film. I'm hoping that like there can be a place for people in every city to go see more independent films. And I don't know. I know that the theater chain, this is a different conversation that I don't really know much about, but I just see the people complaining about like, oh, no one's going to the theaters, and then people are like posting what their AMCs or Harkins look like in smaller towns, or like, and it's just like disgusting. It's like, no wonder they don't want to go.
Well,
That's
sort I gotta push back on those people a little
please.
bit, just
Yeah.
because I remember the 80s. I remember when projectors, while I do love to go see something when it's a nice clean print, and actually, there's a theater in town here, the Loft, that still will show, they have a 70 millimeter cam or a projection setup that they'll do. But I remember going to see films where the reels broke and you'd have
Right.
to wait for 20 minutes for things to get repaired. I remember
I
seeing things
remember that too. Yeah.
where if you had a bad projectionist and it was off slightly, that you could have the framing off, and that the projectionist made that. And so their theaters have never been more comfortable. Even in Tucson, you mentioned Harkins. The Harkins chain, but they play independent films there. They have Garfield, sure, but they also have. I saw, what was it, in the Saints and Sinners, the new Liam Neeson movie that came out, and it was a smaller movie, and I saw that, and yeah, there was a handful of people. It was only open for 2 weeks in the theaters, but they were there. And it's like, in those chains, they will have 3 or 4 screens that have the smaller stuff that's kind of churning over. And I don't know if it's a local thing that they do, but there's clearly somebody in that chain that has said there's an audience for it. So
yeah. Well, I hope that grows, because I just, and maybe I wasn't like cognizant of it, but there was not many options in Phoenix, but maybe it is growing, because my parents have been going up to Flag to escape the heat, and they were like telling me the movies that were at the theater, the AMC or Harkins up there, and it sounded like an independent film festival. Like,
exactly.
like, you have that?
Well,
like it's like, you won't like that one, but see this.
Well, it's also some of these, and my understanding is, kind of the Mad Max Fury Roads and these big tentpole movies, they end up with harder deals out of the gate, where the exhibition, the actual theater chain, is getting less of that money right out of the gate. And it takes several weeks for them to actually start seeing some of the ticket revenue from those sales. And I think that some of the independents, it's a little bit easier for them to make money off of them right away. Right. So they're actually seeing a piece of that ticket. And if nobody's showing up to Mad Max, maybe they'll show up for this, and we'll actually make a little bit of money off concessions and off the ticket sale. I don't know. I don't own a theater, but that's what I assume just by what I see playing in the theater here that's just a few miles from my house. And it's not an art house by any means, but when I go to I haven't gone to an empty showing. So when I've gone to see some of the smaller fare, which and that gives me hope that I think that there's underserved people. There are people that are, there's adults that want to see adult movies that really don't want to go see the next comic book thing, or, just because I happen to love genre films doesn't mean it's the only thing I want to see. There's going to be, there's a romantic comedy out there that I'm going to love. I don't know what it is, but somebody's out there that has a story to tell that's going to absolutely, it's just going to, knock my hair back when they make that movie. And I just want to be open to it. And I hope they'll be able to find me when that voice comes out. Yeah,
it's funny, like there's been like such a shortage of like rom-coms until like this year with the Sidney Glenn film, and it's just, a lot of these have been going, and comedies has been such a dip in comedy.
Oh, it's so weird.
Couple of reasons. I think people were afraid to make jokes, frankly, for a bit. But I think also a lot of these films, especially the rom-coms, like they're just going on to Netflix.
Yeah.
And I'm actually pretty curious. Like, I'm very excited for Dan Lin to be running things. He's got a huge task ahead of him to write this, gigantic cruise ship. But I'm as they start lowering the amount of films they make internally and get back into licensing, like I'm just like hoping that the theatrical studios can start releasing some of these films, and then it seems like it's like Netflix just has to wait one cycle. Like they're gonna get the rights to these films later anyways. Like they can just license it for cheaper. Like look what they did with Hitman, right? They spent a lot of money.
Yeah.
A lot of money. And there were a lot of mini majors competing for that at at least half the price that Netflix ended up paying. And it was like, so like Netflix could have like paid that lower price just as a license deal, frankly, from whatever mini major got it. So,
and even if they wanted to own it, why not? I don't understand how it hasn't sunk in yet, where when a film goes through the natural cycle of being in theaters, it has more resonance. It stays around longer because of the marketing, because of the buzz, because people are talking about it and writing about it for weeks and months. When something goes and it's dumped on Netflix, it's gone by the end of the weekend. I mean, it might have a shelf life of 2 weeks randomly, and it'll show up in the top 10, but then it'll be gone, and people don't even remember that it's there.
And if your algorithm was even kind enough to show you that it exists.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's a Linklater film that's probably going to disappear next weekend. It's going to be gone. People won't. That is fucking weird to me, man.
Isn't that crazy? By the way, okay, the last Linklater film, the animated film.
Yeah.
I didn't even know.
It was nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah. I did not know for I think it was like 3 or 4 months. And I heard of this movie, and then I realized it had been out for 3 to 4 months. I lost my mind. I was like, how do I not know that I owned all of his movies on DVD? I watched The Scanner Darkly with my friends every weekend. I was like, how is this possible? And it's just dumping films into an endless pit, and you just got to get lucky to see something. So
well, I was in Hollywood last weekend for the Cinegear conference, and when I was there, just walking past the Egyptian and seeing the little Netflix logo in front of it, it just kind of hurts my heart a little bit to see that every time.
What do you mean? That's how they get all their qualifying run.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. Look, we're hurting real bad right now. We got one more potential strike ahead of us. And then, I mean, that's a whole other conversation about the cost of shooting in this country versus other countries right now. But there's so much opportunity right now.
Yeah.
A lot. And that's what I see right now is opportunity to fix this system. And we have to convince a lot of people that have been doing this for many decades, I think, to get there. So that's really what Ken and I are just focusing all of our time in, is trying to find all the allies we can to make interesting content and find a way to make our system profitable in any degree, So
it's one movie at a time. I think
one movie at a time.
That's really what it is, because it's that thing when you go see one film and if it catches you at that right moment, it's like becoming a lifelong reader or becoming a fan of music or any of those things. It's you get that one that just catches you right. Then you're just chasing that high for the rest of your life and you're going back. They got me early. So even during down periods where movies have been kind of shitty for years at a time, I'm still going back because I'm hoping that I'm going to get that rush that I got, back in 1985. I'm going to re-engage with that. I'm going to find that again. And I do from time to time. And it's just something when I think about, hanging up my Spurs and I'm done with it, I'm going to go find something else. Then something will come out that just absolutely blows your mind. So
what was the first movie you saw after COVID? When you were back in a packed theater?
Okay. So the first one I saw was Ghostbusters Afterlife. It was the mid-COVID movie that I saw. And that was, so I have a 8-year-old son who's on the spectrum. And so that movie, seeing that one, I had an idea because I had interviewed the cinematographer for that film a couple times, and we were talking about it ahead of that, what they were doing with it and how they were addressing autism in the film. And it was just something I was really curious to see that. And, Yeah, it's literally one of my favorite film going experiences I've ever had, because I got to see this thing that I saw when what is that, 84 or something like that, when the first one came out. I saw that in theater. And here I am with my kid, and he's seeing
Yeah.
a representation of himself on screen
Yeah.
without even really it being called out in that way. And it was just
Yeah.
a really, really beautiful movie for me personally, something that just in that way. So yeah, that was the first one that got me back in. And yeah, it was a good one. Yeah.
And
How
you
about
had
you?
but like just reacting to a film and being around other people,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
was like, it made it so much more exciting. Like there's nothing like seeing, because I saw two films in 1 week, and my reaction, I get very hyperbolic, but my reaction from both of them was like, greatest movie ever, greatest movie,
I'm the same
unbelievable.
way. Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm like, and then I came back down to earth, but like, because I saw Green Knight was the first movie, and
Great. So good.
then I saw Free Guy, the Ryan Reynolds film. I thought that was hilarious, but I was
Yeah.
just like, but like I forgot about that experience of like certain people in the audience like laughing
Yes.
and then triggering other people to laugh because that person's got a really weird laugh, and it's just like this contagious thing, and everyone was like so excited, and so like it was like probably one of the better movie going experiences I've ever had in my life, and it's Free Guy,
Well,
it
yeah.
was a good movie.
Free Guys, I have it right back there. I have that and Green Knight. So I own
It's
both those
good.
movies. They're both good movies, man. There's nothing wrong with either one of those. I
They're
mean, well,
both
Green Knight, people
great
don't
carry
argue
on.
with Green
Yeah.
Knight, but yeah,
Yeah.
but Free Guy's fun. There's nothing wrong with it.
There ain't nothing wrong. Not a chance.
Dude, well, I hope that it's just one of those things where I hope that people keep finding space for original voices. And sometimes
Yeah.
it could be a Free Guy is the thing that's going to knock your hair back. Could be a Garfield that's going to do it if you're at the right age and you see that at the right moment. Sure, why not? I don't judge in that way. For me, it's that I have a tough time understanding people who aren't attracted to creativity. It's not the thing that you're attracted to. It's if you don't love music, or if you don't love film, or if you don't love television, or if you don't love writing, and it could be something else, but there has to be that thing outside of you, or watching other people create something and taking in art. I think it's just a huge important part of the human experience, and I'm just glad that you guys are continuing to foster that and support it, because it's wildly important. It's saved my life. So
Yeah, got to fight for art in every medium. I mean, I think it's so important. I was just seeing James McAvoy, I think, was like going on this whole thing about like just trying to bring art back into like public education, and like 'cause that keeps
yeah,
getting, divested from. But like that was all of my most important experiences in public school in Arizona, was all my art classes in my media program, like making stupid videos for the announcements. That's what ultimately, I didn't think it was, but like that's what led to who I am, and like just firing off those brain cells and like realizing you can actually do this. So yeah, art's hard, but we should try.
it is hard. It is hard. And for those in the internet age, it's important to thank an artist every once in a while, to not just spew your negative feelings about something, but to actually say like, hey, that one was good, I liked that. And everything that has ever been made is somebody's favorite thing. It might not be
Yeah,
yours, but it works for somebody. So
it's
don't
got
take
to
that
work
away
for
from them.
someone,
Yeah.
right? Right.
But
Oh,
dude,
man,
thank you so much for taking the time to do this, man. I really do appreciate it. It was a pleasure to meet you, and congratulations. I think that you guys are doing really good work over there. So
well, thank you so much. And yeah, well, I'm excited for you to, and I hope you and your people is interested in this summer of horror. See
yes,
Maxine, see Longlegs, see Cuckoo.
all of
Um,
them.
it's all coming. Yeah, Longlegs is July 12th, and Cuckoo is August 2nd. If they do well enough, then I can retire and go back to my post-hardcore band. We just got to get the band back together, but
Oh shit, that's not really fair, because I want more films like
Yeah,
that.
no, it's good. It's okay. I'm sure the Spotify streams are going to start rolling in.
What's the name of your band, by the way, so I
It's
can look
called
them up?
yeah, it's called Brian's Escape with an I. We
Okay.
just we just uploaded everything. We put up some unreleased stuff, but yeah, it's it's post-hardcore.
There you go.
It's good.
Okay. When I get in that mode, which is more than I would like to admit, where I still listen to that stuff, it's
I have to. It's the only my de-stressing is just like screaming breakdowns. Like listening to this new Knocked Loose album, you got to listen to that. They're the new, Knocked Loose. You'll enjoy it. You're gonna get some angry complaints, but yeah.
Knocked Loose. Okay, I'll check that out. It's usually Refused, Future Shape of Punk to Come, whatever that one is. That's kind of my go-to post-hardcore album that I
Perfection.
love. Yeah. It's a ballsy fucking name for a record, and they actually got it right. So
that's what the post-hardcore scene is about, is just like coming up with the most ridiculous names and somehow like it's okay. Sweet, man. Well, this is a pleasure. Really, really enjoyed this conversation.
Awesome. Thank you. Nice to meet you, man. Take care.
Right. Hi.
Cool. Thank you, Johnny. Appreciate it.